Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Today, we're going to answer the age-old question, who is the best starting champion inside Raid Shadow Legends? Odds are 99% or more of you guys watching right now have already maxed out, or selected your starting champion inside the game. Maybe not have maxed them out yet, but today I'm going to give my opinion. Who is the best out of all these champions, and what ranking do we attribute to them? But more importantly than that, because let's be real, the good news is even if you pick somebody who's not that great compared to, Kale, spoiler alert, it's okay, because these champions are relatively easy to find. You can open them in mystery shards or in ancient shards when you get those as well, and they're all arguably top 25 rare champions in the game. Of course, they do keep adding new solid rare champions to the game, like Frozen Banshee and Draconis more recently, 6 months ago, and then last month as well. So it always does get kind of more saturated. But anyway, today we're going to rank these champions as we watch them. Probably going to fail here in Dragons 20. Scylla Drakes is going to be a hard carry. She's a daily login reward champion with the 4 rare starting champions on this team. After this, we're going to go ahead and take a look at all their kits, how I kind of built them out, and most importantly, talk about some common mistakes when building each and every one of these 4 champions on this team, the 4 starters inside the game. So, in terms of ranking these characters, it's just my, subjective opinion, obviously, but I rank them, as I always say here on the channel, based on kind of 3 factors. Number 1 is endgame viability. Are these champions going to last me to the mid game or to the end game? If so, I'm more likely to invest in them now because I want some dividends in the future as well off these champions. Number 2 is their value over replacement, or how much value are they going to bring me right now? What skill do they have that's going to be a great addition to my teams? And number 3, their overall versatility, right? Is how many areas of the game can I use this champion? Can I use them in arena, in clan boss? Where can I use them? And that's also going to dictate the likelihood of me ranking them up to 6 stars. So, with all that said, number 4 coming in is going to be Galek. And so far, so good here on this team. So far, so good. Again, I'm not optimistic though. Number 4 is Galek. Galek has really good multipliers. I think top 5, right borderline top 5 multipliers in terms of damage putting out on his A1. His A1 ability is default, and his A2, which is his Hellraiser AoE attack. So he does a lot of damage. However, that's really that's it with Galek, right? On his A3 is a decreased defense, which is great to have, but it's too inconsistent to be your main decreased defense champion on your team, especially as you get to the mid game, and things are looking pretty close to a wipe right now, guys. When you get to the mid game, you're going to want, even in the early game, you're going to really want to invest in ranking up a War Maiden so you can have that 3-turn cooldown decreased defense on the AoE. With Galek, it is a 4 targets at random, and I think it's a 4 or 5-turn cooldown, and the buff is only good, and we got so close, but we do not beat the dragon. Very unfortunate, but let's take a look at the damage here. Kael was the leader with 1.3 million, and then Galek and Athel were kind of neck and neck at 500k and 500k, and then Ehlain coming in at 365k damage, just to give you an indicator of how much damage these champions are built out. All of them have, and I'll show you in a second, all of them have 100% crit rate or very, very close to, and roughly the same gear on these champions. So number 3 is going to be actually Ehlain. So Ehlain is a solid champion in the sense that she has 2 AoE attacks in her kit. So for mid-game viability, once you can start farming and doing a little bit of gear collecting from Fire Knight, right, you can put her in a stun set, and that will be very helpful. You may or may not have noticed that Scylla Drakes is in a stun set, and she has a stun ability, so having her CC is a very valuable role on my team. Now, Ehlain has the highest HP out of any 4 of the starting champions. That's the good news. Bad news is she has the lowest defense out of any of the starting champions, and we're going to get to that in a minute. So Ehlain, she's cool that she has a double hitter on her A3, and she has an AoE on her A2. The bad news is in Ehlain is as you get to the mid game, again, end game viability, I do think Elaine's probably the worst of the 4, meaning that there's a lot of solid nukers that you'll get access to that I think can do what Ehlain does just a little bit better as you progress in the game. So for that reason, I put her at number 3, although the fact that she does have 3 AoE attacks, a double hitter on the A3 again, and the single hitter AoE on the A2 makes her just a little bit cooler than Galek, but now that I say both champions, I think that arguably you can make a case they're both neck and neck at the bottom half of these starting champions. And then number 2 is Athel. Athel is a really cool champion. When I started this game about a year and a half ago, I thought Athel was the worst out of the 4, and boy was I wrong. The cool thing about Athel is she has an ability on her A3 that gives her an extra turn, okay? It's not a crazy ability, higher blessing, so I think when you're starting out this game, you're just like, okay, whatever, an increased attack buff on this champion for 2 turns, and then an increased defense if she has less than 50% HP, who cares? Really, the key sentence here is the last one. Gains an extra turn. What that's going to do is, every 4 turns, you're going to get this, which is essentially a free turn, which will reduce the cooldown of your other skills because she procs an extra turn immediately. So, in other words, if you get to her and Divine Blades is still 1 turn away from being available, this A2 ability, the strong, hard-hitting AoE attack, well, Higher Blessing is going to immediately make that available. So it's really nice to have an ability like that. You keep an eye out for champions that have an ability that gains an extra turn after they use it. That makes them very, very powerful in reducing the cooldowns, essentially, of the other abilities in her kit. And then after that, she has a 3-hitter on her A1 with the Weaken, which is really nice to have the strong version of a Weaken debuff on a starting champion. A lot of early accessible champions in this game have access to a decreased defense, the strong or the weak version, as Galek does. However, not a ton have a reliable Weaken on the A1. 75% chance can be booked all the way up to 100% chance to land that Weaken. That's really valuable in Athel's kit, and a 3-hitter on the A1 is valuable as well. It makes her really, really great for Fire Knight progression, and she's the second best campaign farmer because, again, of that Higher Blessing, getting her a little bit faster through, and a very hard-hitting Divine Blades, getting her a little bit faster through campaign farming, although all of these champions, all 4, are excellent campaign farmers in the early game, so it's really tough to even compare, but Divine Blades, a great ability, and 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit is going to allow players to build her to an 85% crit rate, which is nice as well, because eventually you can take away those crit rate gauntlets. You should never have attack percentage gauntlets on any of these champions, okay? Eventually, you take away the crit rate gauntlets and try to get her crit rate to 85%, or 80% once you get not pinpoint accuracy, once you get a deadly precision, and then you'll be looking pretty good on your Aethel when you can get that crit damage gauntlets on her, as I have right now. Okay, so number 1 is Kale, man. I mean, Kale is incredible, and I think, the cat's been out of the bag on Kale for a long time, but Kale is a tremendous champion. He's by far the best out of these champions in Clan Boss. He's definitely a tremendous champion. You just saw him in Dragon's Lair. He's amazing with all those poisons, and that's really the name of the game when you talk about Kale, is those poisons. I think that early on, players look at Acid Rain, they're like, this is incredible, and it is a really, really solid ability because it has to fill the turn meter of this champion by 25% for each enemy killed. And again, that's what makes him, again, arguably the best campaign farmer out of these 4 starting champions. But again, we're splitting hairs here. They're all fine. But on 3-turn cooldown, you can fill the turn meter if he's killing 4 enemies by 100%. He gets another turn. It's really, really insane with Acid Rain. Also has a 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit. Very important, again, that we have his crit rate, built out to at least 85% at least on this champion. Now, here's the thing about Kale, though. When we get away from campaign farming, this Acid Rain ability is still great to have, don't get me wrong, it's a tremendous, but against bosses and against Clan Boss, Dragon, Ice Golem, whatever, most of his damage is going to be coming from poisons, and we just saw that on our failed Dragon's Lair run, right? So the weak version of poison on his A1, and then on his A3 Disintegrate, it is a 4-time at random, has a 40% chance of placing a 5% poison debuff for 2 turns. So really, really solid on the Disintegrate. That puts out a ton of damage from your Kale. So Kale, in terms of endgame viability, he's the best out of these 4 champions, okay? So again, when I'm thinking about endgame, I'm thinking about Kale, then Athel, then maybe Galek and Ehlain kind of in the conversation towards the end. I think that they scale off a little bit faster than Kale and Athel, certainly. So let's go ahead and talk about some mistakes on these champions. So on Kale, let's start with Kale, right? So first of all, having an 8, especially if they're campaign farmers, we already talked about this, or we didn't talk about this, my bad. All of these champions, if they're just going to be your campaign farmer, okay? If they're just going to be your campaign farmer, which ends up happening oftentimes as you kind of progress in this game. At first, you're going to be using Kale everywhere. And then it's going to be, okay, maybe just on my campaign. He's just farming campaigns. All of these champions, Kale, look at their speed. 103 on Kale. Athel is 107, or Ehlain, excuse me, is 107. Athel is 104. And Galek is, where are you, Galek? Is he right in front of my face? Yes, he is. He's 103. So the good news is, check this out, right? If we go to campaign and we take a look at 12-3, which is the best place to farm for silver, Lord Shazar is the fastest champion we have to worry about. And his speed is 101. That's his speed, ladies and gentlemen. So, if they're just your campaign farmers, all of these champions and any of these starting champions, you're already going to be faster than all of the enemies without any extra speed on their kit. So, what does that mean? It means that they should not have speed boots on them. They should all have attack percentage, or if you just want a little bit, no, just attack percentage. You just want to care about damage, I was going to say, or no, just attack percentage. So again, I don't know what I have on Kale. I have speed, obviously, because he's set up for a dungeon right now, and I think that all of, now, Ehlain might have, no, she has speed too. Do I have anybody? Aethel, you have, yes. So Aethel is in right now a campaign farming build. Attack on the boots, attack on the chest, and in crit rate and crit damage wherever we can get it. So that's how you build a campaign farmer, with attack percentage on the boots, not speed on the boots. You don't need speed unless it's less than 101, which it's almost always going to be above that, okay? Just a kind of a side note for you guys. But back to Kale. So we already talked about this. Kale is doing most of his damage from, yes, poison, right? So I have him in an HP chest. All of these starting champions' HP sucks, okay? All of their defense is pretty good, is for a rare, I guess. None of them are above 1,000. Only one is below 900, which is Ehlain, like we talked about. So 914 defense. We have another 914 defense. We have an 837 defense, and we have a 936 defense on Athel. But look at this HP. It's ridiculously low. So you're going to have to be comfortable beyond campaign farming, putting these champions in HP percentage on their chests, right? On their chest. So HP percentage on the chest, never use flat stats. So HP percentage on the chest of Kale, HP percentage on basically everybody unless campaign farming. And once you 6-star these champions, what you can do is, if you're finding that, hey, dude, Ash, I've progressed in this game, and I have my Kale in HP percentage, but he's just not dying anymore. So can I put him in attack percentage? What I would advise you guys do is, sure, but I would also consider putting HP on, maybe not on Kale, because you need that accuracy, the next tip. But I would also advise putting some HP or resistance or whatever. The only reason I have this resistance is the triple roll on attack on Ehlain, by the way. But putting some HP on the banner once you 6-star rank up these champions. And the reason I say that is because that will allow you to get the percentage attack on the chest without foregoing a ton of HP, without losing a ton of durability on these champions, okay? So definitely something to consider. Never neglect your health. I mean, look at this. And you saw Ehlain probably dying a ton. You know, this is not going to fly. It's just total HP. Certainly not as you progress in the game, 25,000 HP. In the very beginning, of course it's going to fly, but you're going to have to be comfortable with eventually taking an HP percentage chest and put it on these champions, okay? So again, I have HP on their chest, except for Athel, I believe, out of this group. So just something to consider. On Kale, accuracy is so important, okay? We already talked about this. He's landing a lot of his damage from poison. So very, very important that we have his accuracy built out, you know, enough that he's landing all of those poisons. Early players in this game don't properly value accuracy, okay? So really, really important. Again, I don't know how much more I can stress that. General rule of thumb is for every level, every stage that you're on in a specific dungeon, you want to multiply that by 10, and that's how much accuracy you need. So for example, we were just in level 20 Dragon's Lair. We had 200 plus accuracy because, you know, level 20 times 10, 200, okay? So general rule of thumb, Obviously, a little bit extra, always helpful as well. So, Kale, what are we worried about? We're worried about building enough durability and sustainability on this champion, building a lot of accuracy on this champion as well. And if he's only a campaign farmer, no speed needed on the boots. Otherwise, speed on the boots, great way to get some extra speed on this team. So Athel here is pretty straightforward. As I said, guys, I mean, her masteries, I went with flawless execution on these masteries because I just wanted to make sure that she was doing enough damage so that she's always killing the enemies every single time in campaign farming. In terms of, I didn't show you Kale's masteries, but I went with War Master on Kale. That way he's getting extra damage off of his A1, and I went the pretty typical support route for this champion. And then in terms of Galek masteries, again, we went War Master. We ended at Master Hexer because of his decreased defense. And then for Ehlain, we went with, again, flawless execution, and I actually have retribution on Ehlain, giving us a 50% chance to a counter attack when this champion loses 25% of their max HP from one single enemy skill. The reason for that is she has no debuff. She's not bringing anything like weaken or poisons or decreased defense like these other three champions are to the table, so no reason to go in the support tree. She's certainly not healing either. So Ehlain, guys, one thing I want to mention on her is, and again here, you guys can kind of see the kit here. We do have the attack percentage on the chest of Ehlain right now, and we also have crit rate on the gauntlets. Always be thinking about crit rate or crit damage on your gauntlets of all of these champions. Lightning Arrow, excuse me, places a 30% increased crit rate buff on this champions for 3 turns if the target is killed. So what some people do, and this ability has an extra 15% chance of inflicting a critical hit anyway. So what some people do with Ehlain in the early game or in arena, right, is they'll open up with Lightning Arrow as their first ability that they use on her. And they'll stack a ton of crit damage, as much as they possibly can on this champion. What this will do is hopefully kill one target, give you an extra 30% crit rate. So you only have to build her to a 70% crit rate, which is going to be helpful. It's going to be easier to get that 70% crit rate from substats. That way you can put crit damage on her gauntlets, okay? And then when you go to Valley of Death, you know, even with a 70% crit rate, you'll be fine. Attack all enemies 2 times on a 3-turn cooldown, because you'll have that crit rate buff up for 3 turns. And then, sure, that crit rate buff will fall off by the time this is available again, but you'll still have an 85% chance, 70 to plus 15, this ability, excuse me, has inherently in it to land a critical hit. So an idea for you guys to build on Ehlain. And then last but not least, Galek, again with Curse Blade. This is what I was talking about, guys. And this is why I kind of rank him towards the bottom of these champions. It's a 5-turn cooldown. 4 times at random means it's not a straight up AoE attack. Has a 30% chance of placing a 30% decreased defense for 2 turns. Has a 30% chance, can be booked up to 40% chance of placing the strong version of decreased defense for 2 turns if the target has more than 2 debuffs. So not bad against, say, the dragon once you get there, but it's not going to help you out at all against waves, especially not on a 5-turn cooldown, only lasting for 2 turns on the debuff. So I think that this is where Galek really falls a little bit short here again on the Cursed Blade ability. It also doesn't hit incredibly hard compared to his Hellraiser ability. Also has an increased speed buff on this champion for 2 turns, which isn't bad at all. Hellraiser and the Cross Slash, which actually does a lot of damage on 2 hits, is definitely the highlights of Galek's kit. But again, in both the case of Galek and Ehlain, I just feel like you can find better options really quickly after you've been playing this game for a few months. So guys, we're gonna go ahead and end it there. Hopefully you were able to take away one little nugget of information from today's video. If you like the content here, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 50K subscribers, guys. I appreciate you, and as always, take care, guys.